Yeah, what's fun, I read like last month I read the like Steve Jobs book, and I thought of you a lot because it always mentions Cupertino because that's where they were working all the time. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's pretty crazy. But yeah, and also because of that, because I read that book, which is kind of what Sorkin's Steve Jobs is adapted off of.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also been like obsessed with The Social Network for like the past year. I've just been kind of very immersed in this like Aaron Sorkin like tech movies. Just the two, but yeah, I think it was last year I watched The Social Network and Steve Jobs in like the same night. Because I was just like, I was just feeling it, and I had never done that before. And yeah, and they're both like, for me, like I haven't seen The West Wing, but they're both for me like his crowning achievements as a writer. Definitely like number one for me is The Social Network for Sorkin things, and actually Fincher things. The Social Network is like maybe like in the past year like moved into like a top 5 like film for me actually, because
Wow.
I've grown to like it like more and more and more. And then when you said we were gonna do this episode, I like didn't rewatch it because, well, I did, but I didn't rewatch it regularly because I watched it like 2 or 3 times this year. Instead, I watched the commentary of Sorkin, with Sorkin in the cast, and I watched the commentary with Fincher. So I'm just like super immersed in that movie. Like after this podcast, like I'll be able to like probably let it go for a little bit for sure. But yeah, fucking love The Social Network. I'm probably like, I don't know, like we've covered a lot of movies I really like, so it wouldn't be true to say, but this is like just very up there for me
Mm-hmm.
among movies we've covered.
Well, yeah. I guess I think Social Network was also both on our top 10 of the decade list that we did with Jake last year or the year before, whenever that
I feel
was.
like, yeah, I had to have had it on there. I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember if I did, but I feel like I had to.
Yeah, because I think we talked about it a good amount then, but it's one that I feel like I guess you and me mention
Right.
quite a bit, that it's good to deep dive into it.
There's a Quentin Tarantino quote that I really like, where like just one of those like articles that comes up where it's like Quentin Tarantino thinks this about this movie, from this podcast that he did, where he's and this one specifically comes up a lot for some reason, but and it's on the Facebook feed usually. Isn't that funny? But it will always comes up says where Quentin Tarantino says like Social Network is the best film of the decade, and his quote is like, "It reigns supreme." And I'm just picturing him saying that. It reigns
Like with his
supreme.
hands. Yeah.
Right. And so when he says that, like, it just backs up my conviction more, and like, it doesn't make me feel as weird about my obsession with this movie.
Yeah, there's some validation. Yeah. No, I think, I mean, just in terms of cultural relevance too, like this is so just relevant for how, like, where we are as a society today, and like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and it was also like when it came out, everyone saw it, like,
yeah,
just because it is like based off Facebook and something that's so relevant to our lives. So it's something, it's like a great piece of cinema that's also just really accessible, and like that, and not that everyone sees it, not that everyone sees it as immediately like thinks it's brilliant, but everyone I think is intrigued by this for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's like it's a just a backstory into something that has, like we were just talking about, really influenced our lives like in the past 20 years. And to think that this was made just like 6 years after Facebook was actually
Yeah.
started, like that
Right.
is
Yeah. Yeah.
crazy. And to think
Right.
like over 10 years later and it's still uh like it's not outdated, even though how like Facebook has grown into like the behemoth it is, it's still not like outdated, and it sort of set up what we saw in the past decade too. It's
Right.
yeah, I don't know. Just like after watching it, I was just like, all I could think of was like, whoa, like we live in a society, man. Like
Right, right.
yeah, like
Well, it's that last. I think what triggers that feeling, especially to me, is that final one of the. It's one of the final lines of the movie. It's when Justin Timberlake, Sean Parker gets, he's like doing cocaine with like the college kids or whatever, and he's on his rant, and he says people will live on the internet, and it's just so that is like the most I don't know, the one of the biggest lines in the movie for me, because look what we're doing. Like we're living on the internet right now. We live on the internet like most of the day. It's so ridiculous, and it was all spawned by, it's like, social media. And then it was,
mhm.
it connected everything else, but yeah, it's everything now.
Yeah, it's so very much Aaron Sorkin, and in the way the dialogue is, and then how it's shot. It looks so much
Yeah.
like a David Fincher movie.
Right. Well, I mean, I think Fincher too, like specifically, he has to keep the pace of this script so hard that it doesn't allow him to be as, I don't know, experimental, or I don't know, auteur. Like he's not doing like the Mank the Mank stuff, for sure. He's
Hmm.
got to keep to this structure so much, and but that's when, like, I don't know, he gets to exercise like that quality of in him, then, like the ability to um get out the great performances. And I think there was like, I think that the first scene specifically, I forget how many takes it was, but like a ridiculous amount, like 80 takes or something like that. um and then covering everything like really well, and just like there are moments where he is making it like his own, for sure. Like there's like a scene, I forget, in the there's that moment where there's that the rower, what are they called, what is that called, the rowers
Crew?
racing.
Yeah,
Is it crew? Yeah, they're
I think
rowing
so. Yeah.
crew, they're racing. It's like really intense, like a lot of like slow mo, like that different lens that they use to make it look all weird and distorted like that. Like I forget, there's in the commentary, like Army Hammer says something like oh, this is Fincher's like scene or something like that. This is Fincher's like appearance. This is his appearance in the movie, jokingly, because it is so like I don't know, just hands-on stylist, like style, how he took that scene over.
Hmm.
um and it is pretty awesome, like the
Yeah, and I mean, a scene that I really like that like stood out to me is just right in the beginning, um, after the scene with his girlfriend breaking up with him, when he's just walking through campus and it's
yeah,
dark. The soundtrack
yeah.
is just playing that really
Hmm.
soft do do do,
Yeah.
and it just like it looks like a Fincher movie, like Zodiac or
Hmm.
something, or
Yeah.
Seven. Like it's very
It's like this isn't your
ominous and
like this isn't like a regular college movie you're about to see at
yeah.
all. It's like, it's almost like it's setting up a thriller, but it's not. It's more like setting up something that has a lot of weight and a lot of I don't know, dark themes to it, and
Mm,
that you're following kind of a deeply disturbed protagonist too. Um,
yeah.
yeah.
And the way in that sequence where the soundtrack is just it's very like soft and like um
Yeah.
it's almost like it's sweet and like dark, but then it just goes to oh
Yeah,
like at one point it just like drops. It's like oh and it's like oh my
and then
god.
yeah, it's like when he's like finally like gets to his dorm room or something. It's just like dun,
Yeah.
dun.
Yeah, I love how that just changes out of nowhere and it's like
Yeah.
terrifying. Yeah.
Yeah, well, just the opening to this movie in general is so perfect. Like the fact that I mean, I think like the first scene is something that like it's something that sets like the tone and the pace. Like it makes you realize you
Mm.
have to you're gonna have to like listen up. Like you gotta like pay attention because immediately they start talking so fast. Um in that first scene, and there's almost more dialogue in that scene maybe than any scene in the movie, so it like really I don't know, it like it tunes your brain for how people are going to communicate for the rest of the movie, you know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
and it's just a great like uh yeah, I mean like the movie's bookended with Rooney Mara, like, so it's just I don't know, I think it's a brilliant like choice to make it that this whole thing is just um based off a girl that like he's not even really in love with necessarily, but that's just a girl who that he wants to be liked by, a girl that I don't know, made a girl that made him feel bad about himself, because she kind of gave it to
She
him
hurt his
like
ego. Yeah.
right, and she gave it to him like just honestly, she wasn't like trying to be mean. She was just trying to be like, she's like, dude, you got some issues like
Yeah.
that you got to work on. Like you've been talking about like finals clubs and rowing crew, like that whole scene, and like he's like really like status obsessed and like all that shit, and she just and yeah, it's kind of yeah.
Yeah.
um
I mean, it's definitely setting up like motivation for him wanting to be this like cutthroat too, and not just like wanting to make a site for just the sake of making something. Like it gives him that extra motivation. Um and yeah, it's I watched an interesting video essay on like just the screenplay and how like that beginning scene, if you really like go line by line with it, that Erica isn't necessarily trying to like yeah, she's being like honest, like she's being very like nice and polite about it in a way, but there's like a couple things where he misinterprets what she's saying and taking it as an insult, and it's like hurting his ego.
right,
Yeah,
right.
and you just see that and like you said, like it sets up this throughout the rest of the movie, like it sets up the rest of like him sort of feeding his ego and why
Hmm.
he gravitates towards Justin Timberlake's
Yeah,
character because he's just like feeding the beast there.
right.
Whereas Eduardo is
And
trying to
also,
rein him in.
right, it also works through the lens that lens because they are talking so fast that in that opening scene you see like so much like communication breakdowns occur,
Hmm.
like that, like eight in a row, and she's like, and then all of a sudden you're like, they're both confused and they're like, what are we
Yeah.
talking about again?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, this I mean, this is you're much more knowledgeable about Sorkin and everything, but like I just find his dialogue to be so much more real and like because I'm not always as into some movies that are very dialogue heavy. Like I find it difficult to even some like Tarantino movies, they kind of lose me sometimes when they
Right.
get really dialogue heavy. But with this, it just feels so like natural, and there's
Yeah.
like people interrupt each other constantly, and it's like that
Yep.
happens all the
Yeah.
time.
And he doesn't only have like amazing one-liners, you know, but he also like he just knows how to speak through these characters and really show in every movie he does, especially like his last like I won't include the trial of the Chicago 7, but like I feel
Mm,
like Molly's Game, Steve Jobs, this Moneyball, like all those scripts, he speaks through what each main character wants and like through their insecurities so much. Like I just love how like he kind of takes the theme of that like a couple of the biggest innovations that were done were through people that were like deeply insecure
mm,
about a lot of things and have a lot of baggage. You know, it's kind of along the lines of like why I like The Last Dance a lot is because it's not because like oh the Bulls were like amazing. It's because the Bulls were amazing, but they were arguing over credit the whole way, and they
mm-hmm,
all were like worried about their egos the whole way, and like the past. And if you saw like a couple weeks ago, a week or two ago, they're still arguing. Like
Scottie Pippen,
Pippen, like
yeah.
apparently wrote a book, and he's like
Yeah.
still talking about how he's not getting enough credit for like the 6 rings that he won 20 years ago. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I just feel I love just how the Social Network does this so well with its characters like that you know, especially also with the Winklevosses. The Winklevosses are, you know, just very insecure like the whole way through. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the best American movies are like just about this whole thing about how we are I don't know, like while we're hungry for success because we're like also deeply fragile at the same time. I feel like Scorsese, it's one of the reasons why everyone relates to a Scorsese movie, you know, it's just and it's what makes a great American movie. Keep it in mind for
Wow.
our next American movies podcast.
No, you're actually kind of blowing my mind right now by bringing up that that aspect because uh yeah, no, that's very true. And I talked about this a little bit a few episodes ago, but I watched this documentary series called Can't Get You Out of My Head, which is done by the BBC,
Yep.
and it goes into like how like it goes a lot into like the American mindset, and it's like deeply rooted. There's all this optimism and the underdog
Right.
and everything, obviously,
Right.
but below that, there's a whole lot of paranoia and
Mm-hmm.
fragility because the basis for many people coming to America originally was to escape persecution and corruption.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
that's why like conspiracy theories are so prevalent here, is because there's still, that is still deeply rooted in our society of they people came to escape that, but then there's still the fear that that is still around us. And that even goes down to like a personal level too. Like with this, everybody is so fragile and sensitive and paranoid constantly. I think they even
Right.
talk about that, like Andrew Garfield's character Eduardo, it brings that up at some point about the paranoia that Mark had. um and yeah, that's no that
Oh,
I'm
like
glad
in
you
the
brought
one of
up.
the deposition scenes, you mean?
Yeah, yeah. And I think in
Right.
regards to like Sean Parker and bringing him along.
Right. Right.
But yeah, that's really interesting, the American aspect to it. Glad you brought that up.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I love it when he gets up to his dorm room and immediately starts coding and there's actually like there was a great I keep like looking through this movie through the lens now of like the commentary because and like what people were saying about it, but I forget who said this. It was like Eisenberg or Fincher when he's doing the whole face smash thing. They kind
Mm,
of like make an analogy to it because they view Mark very much like at this stage as an artist, like coding for him like as an art form. So they kind of say that it's like equivalent to like a graffiti artist, you know what I mean? Because it has that like intrusive, wrong side to it to him.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like, yeah, that's kind of how I guess how I view him sitting down there to code after being like told off like that and grabbing a beer is when he starts blogging, and then he does the face smash thing. And it's not only like it accomplishes like so many things, like this next montage, which also has fantastic music. It has that da 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 da.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
Oh
It's
yeah,
like,
that's so good.
no. Don't know. Yeah. So one, it shows like, I don't know, kind of the idea of this Harvard social construct that Mark and his friends are not a part of, because it shows the most bougie parties like I've ever seen in like in a college, like think in a college movie. When do parties ever look this upscale or cool or like anything? And I feel like it's also because like Fincher's wanting you to like look at these parties through the lens of Mark and the people who aren't there, which are his friends who are sitting in their dorm room drinking, probably like just socially frustrated guys because they're coders. You know, they're drinking. Yeah, it's just them and a bunch of dudes just drinking alone in their dorm. I also really like. I think it's Joseph Mazzello who plays Dustin Moskowitz.
Oh yeah.
And Dustin Moskowitz, yes, because he's just, you know, in the background there while Mark's coding. He's just like drinking a beer. He always is kind of like, I don't know, just kind of being like a goofy, funny guy to watch. Like just, I don't know, just really, really good in this subtly, you know. And actually, he is the kid from Jurassic Park. If you didn't know that.
No way, really?
Yep, he plays Billy. I had to think about that for a second. I was like, I know. Yeah. That's like what he's like known for, is being the kid in Jurassic Park.
I see the side by side now. Yeah, of him now, and
Okay,
that's
nice.
wow, yeah.
Yeah.
Dang.
And it's just like a small performance. He doesn't even have a lot of lines, but he's just always around kind of being like a goofy college dude, and he pulls it off great.
Yeah. No, this is actually the first time I really noticed his character, I feel like.
Yeah.
I think of my like previous viewings of it, I just never really paid attention because I didn't think it mattered. But then yeah, this is the first time I really like noticed and was like, oh wait, yeah, this guy has been there along the whole way. Yeah. And
well, yeah, because he doesn't say anything, so it makes sense if you don't notice him. But what was the other thing I was going to say about the scene? So, all right, so it accomplishes the social construct. It also shows you what Mark like is, you know, like what he's good at, and it gives you like, I don't know, like technical knowledge. It gives you that technical knowledge without being too dry, because you know how he goes through in the voiceover of like, you know, this like whatever, one of the frats or fraternities like Facebook accounts that he has to hack through, like they don't have this much of a firewall, so I, you know, blah blah blah, should be able this easy with if I do this, you know. I don't remember any of it, but it just shows that he know what he's good at, like what his thing essentially is. And then also in the middle of this, Andrew Garfield walks in.
Yes.
And we get the introduction to his character. I don't know why. I love it when this man walks into that dorm room. I love Andrew Garfield in this movie just so much. And so when he comes in, I'm like, yes. It's Eduardo. How could I forget Eduardo? Yeah, it's Eduardo. And apparently he's been like reading his blog, and he's he knows he's causing havoc, and then that's when when Mark goes like, I need the algorithm, and
then he starts
like,
writing on the window.
For some reason he has that algorithm, Eduardo. And then there's that and that's that classic like window shot
Oh yeah.
That's
Mm-hmm.
like, see, yeah, where he's just writing it. There's just some like earlier Mark says to Rooney Mara, who plays Erica, that like, and it's when like he's trying to brush by something that Eduardo like made like six figures during a summer betting like oil futures or something like that, and Erica's like, what? How? And he's like, if you know the price of oil, you can predict blah blah blah. And that's how he does. That's how he knows it. It's just so cool to be around like such, I don't know, brilliant like kids who, um, like, because they seem like kids, they act like kids, like maturity wise, but they're just like they're ahead of all of us, like,
Mm.
as like the dean says later, like, Harvard students say it's better to invent a job than get one, so go find another project. To the Winklevoss twins. um yeah, so Eduardo is just like this brilliant business mind, I guess. And that's maybe why he has that algorithm.
Yeah, I
He's
guess
just good
so.
at,
Yeah.
yeah. And so yeah, then he finishes that site, and then everyone's doing that, like, um, they're picking between the two girls
Yep.
in
Who's
every
hot
room.
or
There's all
whatever.
these
Mm-hmm.
guys are like left or right,
Yeah.
and definitely right. And then like girls are like walking in, and they're getting really offended, of
Yeah.
course. And uh, then all the traffic is like building up on Mark's computer screen, and he's just like kind of sitting there like watching it go,
Mm-hmm.
which is so cool. And then Eduardo kind of looks like really terrified, and like, it's kind of the first thing where he's like trying to like be the babysitter of like what Mark's doing, and Mark kind of sees it as like intrusive, to what he's
Yeah.
doing.
Mm-hmm.
And he asks if we could shut it down, and I love the way he just looks at him. He's like, kind of like, what? Shut it down? Like, we're just getting started. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's Eduardo's always trying to like rein him in and contain
Hmm.
him, and
Yeah.
not an easy task. Yeah. Uh, it's just funny how I think it shows also how obsessed this character of Mark Zuckerberg is with like um I don't know if it's taking his frustration out with actual social situations and like taking that out like online in an online way, as if him blogging about his breakup is the way that everybody finds out about it, not him telling anybody. So like Eduardo comes in and
Right.
he's like, oh, so you
Right.
guys broke up? And he's like, how'd you know? He's like, you blogged
Right.
about it. But he
Right.
is.
And as said later, that is his one friend.
Yeah.
Then that's how his friend found out about it. So yeah, it's definitely like, yeah, his relationship through the world is always like when he flips on his computer screen and does whatever.
Yeah, yeah. That
uh
is yeah, that scene just sets it all up
yeah.
perfectly. And it's
Well,
moving so
yeah.
fast at this point too that
Right,
it's
right,
it's like
right.
really exciting. Yeah, just exciting to
It
watch.
is. Yeah, it is. And it's the best like opening for a movie. Like, just this string of scenes that we've only covered like three scenes. Like, we've covered the bar scene, the opening credits where he's walking through campus, and then this. And like, it's so great. Um
Hmm.
so I don't even, I guess then that one like head of like tech guy at Harvard gets woken up,
That's right. Yeah.
because like the Harvard's network is crashing because of this. Um, so what's gonna be hard about revisiting this film is like, and
It
going through it in detail, is how it cuts between all the deposition
right.
scenes back to real time. So like, my mind is telling me right now that it cuts to a deposition scene, maybe.
Probably. Yeah. Because I mean, very
Yeah,
early on, I think there's the whole
because they're
line of
interwoven constantly.
yeah. That's why it's definitely hard to go like chronologically to revisit
I
this. Yeah.
Yeah, I just remember there's like a scene next where I'm pretty sure Rashida Jones goes like, the site got 200 hits or 22 hits in 2 hours, and he says like
22,000.
2,200,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's like, wow.
Yeah, and I mean, very early on, probably I think right around this time too is when we get that line that's pretty well known. I mean, throughout the movie, it's just where he's like, "Your best friend is suing you for $600 million." He's like,
Oh yeah,
"Thanks, I
yeah.
didn't already know that," or something, and so it's like, already in the beginning we know this, because we're
Right.
cutting to the
Like,
deposition,
yeah.
and Eduardo is also there helping him out. So,
Right. It's like everything's kind of a prelude to like, all right, this is like gonna fall apart somehow, like,
mhm.
yeah. Um,
But yeah, from there, I mean, I guess it pretty much he
like there's
becomes
that
well
scene
known
in,
on campus for
yeah,
doing
for
it. So,
making that. So then there's
mhm.
that scene in class where they toss him the note and it says asshole,
Yep, that's right.
and it works. That's the same word for me because of Erica.
Hmm.
In the commentary, apparently they wrote "you dick," um,
Wait,
but
no,
it wasn't good enough for.
I think it does say you dick.
All right, no, yeah, it says "you dick," but
Does it say
apparently
dick or
they
asshole?
wrote. It says "dick," I'm pretty sure, but
Yeah, I think it does say dick.
I think in the commentary they were gonna do something else, and it like got cut for the rating.
Interesting.
Yeah, so what's made me think of that, but. What's funny is that scene specifically is used a lot in inspirational videos, like go get out of your routine, go get what you want in life, that those types of
Hmm.
shit, like be an innovator, blah blah blah, and it's showing him like just get up and walk out of class like he's being like courageous. But what's funny in the movie, it's like him doing it because like again, just because he feels bad about himself.
Yeah, he is a dick. Yeah, it's it's funny because I don't know. Apparently there's a lot of like this movie is very influential to other people wanting to start their own tech companies. And apparently this had a huge
I'm not
influence on
surprised. I'm not
that.
surprised. It makes me want to, and I have no idea how.
See, it does seem cool, but to me, it more influences me and uh just I felt that way when I first watched it. When it first came out, like, oh my God, this is so like cool and badass. At this point, I feel like it just emphasizes the toxicity of it all, um,
Yeah.
in a way. And I feel like Mark Zuckerberg at first was not wanting to like, um, he apparently wasn't going to see the movie. He ended up actually seeing it, but I feel like once it came out that people were like really influenced by it, and maybe for whatever reasons they have, that he then started to like appreciate it more because it makes him possibly look cool, like he was with all these girls.
Right.
And yeah, and um so yeah, I don't know, that's just from like looking more into like what he thinks about this movie. I found that to be like interesting that a lot of people, like you
Well,
said,
yeah,
it's
his
used as
life, like
inspiration.
as portrayed by like Fincher and Sorkin and Jesse Eisenberg, I'm sure looks cooler than it actually did.
Yeah. Hmm.
Than the experience. Yeah, it doesn't have. It has the music. It has the cool lighting. It has. Yeah, I get that. So I think then he like leaves class, and then the Winklevoss twins.
Mm.
Well, I think we also skipped like when we meet the Winklevoss twins for the first time. It's like their rowing crew, and they're like 100 yards like ahead of everyone, and
Hmm.
they're going like, is there anything we could do to make this competitive? And they're just like, just keep rowing the boat. Like they're just like total like snobby douchebag guys, like Harvard royalty, old money, or whatever you want to call it. Like
Yep.
they're just set up so well. um And you know what? Actually, like obviously Army Hammer plays both guys, but what I didn't know um, is that Josh Pence plays the body of
Yeah,
Tyler Winklevoss.
he's like the
So
stand-in. Yeah,
yeah, so like when Army Hammer's like, his head is like talking, obviously, like our Josh Pence is like doing all the hand gestures and like shit like that. Yeah,
yeah,
I
that's
didn't
wild.
know
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
and I actually noticed there are a few scenes where you can see that it's not Army Hammer. Like, I know there's this one scene where the three of them, I forget their friend's name, but they're like walking into a room and Army Hammer goes in first, and you can see the other Winklevoss twin is like the last one to go in, and you can clearly see that that is
Yeah.
Josh Pence's face and not Army Hammer's. But it's like, I don't know, it's just really amazing how they did that, because even just like that quick scene, it's really hard to notice um that little detail. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I just love Army Hammer in this. Like, I think it's such a good performance.
Hmm.
And just like the like little like subtle differences between the twins, that I still, as many times as I've seen the movie now, I don't like 100% pick up on. Like I know that one of them has like slicked back hair, the other one has more like regular hair and is kind of more proper,
Hmm.
and the other one's like a little more douchey than the
Yeah.
I think maybe Tyler's more douchey than Cameron, maybe.
Oh, I don't remember the names of who's who,
Yeah,
but I do
but
know what you're talking about. Like that scene where they're debating like what direction to go in, like legally, to like try and take down
mhm,
Mark, or it's like the three of them in a room. You can really tell like the difference between
mhm,
one and the other. Yeah,
yeah,
one is definitely a little more like, I don't know, prude in a way, like proper, and
right.
yeah, the other one's more fratty, I guess, in a way. Um, that's an
And
exaggeration, but
then
yeah.
they have their friend is, what is this guy's name? It's
Divya.
Max Ming, what's his name?
Well, his the actor is Max.
Divya
Yeah.
Narendra, and the actor
Hmm.
is Max Minghella. Yeah, I think this guy's really good in this movie too. Just of,
Hmm.
he's, yeah, yeah. I just think that trio or duo, whatever you want to, it's just perfectly casted for like the antagonist.
Yeah. Hmm. And it's, yeah, like you said, like the old money Harvard, like royalty, like these
Hmm.
guys like represent that so well. That's like, it's shocking that that's like a true story, that because it seems almost like too perfect that um these type of guys would be, the anti computer nerd. You know,
Right.
it's almost representing like, there's a lot of books and just stories about how like we are in the age of the nerd now, and like everything's for the nerds. Like even comic book movies, like comic books are cool now, and
Right.
this is
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
representing that like these guys are really great athletes, and
Right.
and what they do. And
And they're still trying to get in on what's cool, but they're just they're not. Yeah. Uh
if they were the inventors
yeah.
of
They're
Facebook, they would have invented Facebook. Yeah.
right. Right. Right.
They can't just have it because
Exactly.
they've always been the ones with money and power. They can't do it now because the nerds have taken over. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah, because like, I mean, their initial plan, because now we can connect that to the scene where they bring him to like the fraternity house and they hand him that like giant sandwich when he walks, like, you
Yeah.
hungry, and they just hand him this giant sandwich. um and they're like, we have this like idea, Harvard connection, and like they really just want him to build all of it, and they're just kind of trying to be like, they're kind of just trying to be the business guys who like capitalize off this programmer's abilities, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like what like I'm sure to a degree in that scene, like as you see like like Mark doesn't say anything back to them, like that he's kind of thinking like what do you fucking think this is? Like I'm just gonna do all this work and like it's gonna be your thing or whatever. I don't know. Like that
Yeah.
that what are you like, I guess he's thinking like what are you going to bring to the table, like it doesn't mean anything that you just have like an idea, like that doesn't mean anything in this world, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Right.
I guess in Mark's world you got to know how to program, you got to know the industry, you got to know how to program. These guys clearly aren't no don't know either or something like that.
Yeah.
And he has like that different mindset, you know, like even like Eduardo like defers with this, like um when that when that character Divya goes like, what, you uploaded it for free, like that site he invented in
Yeah.
high school or what, that app, he's like you uploaded for free, and he's like why, you know, like he asks him immediately, and he just kind of he's kind of looks back at him, yeah, he's like
Yeah.
because it's the cool thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. He felt like a badass right then, saying that. So
Right,
yeah.
right. He goes to that party, that like funny party, where Eduardo's there, and he has that
Oh yeah.
hat on. It's like
Hmm.
Caribbean night or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And he says something about that, like it's Caribbean night, but they're playing this music or
yeah.
something like that. Yeah. He has some like
Well, and it's
comment.
clearly
Yeah.
such a lame party. Well, no, he says I can't stare at that picture of Niagara Falls that has nothing to
Oh,
do with the
that's
Caribbean.
it. Yeah. 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 Good call. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just such a lame party, and I love how like when he gets there, when Eduardo sees him, he does that like that improvised like dance across the room, that improvised dance across the room. um
Hmm.
yeah, another just great Andrew Garfield moment.
Yeah, and well then that's when he brings him like um
Yeah,
outside the
and he
party
tells
to
him
like,
about
yeah,
the
he's
new idea,
hmm and
and he goes through it like really quickly.
it's clear that he's like um he's wanting it to include Eduardo in this, but he's also not gonna wait for him. Like he's
Right, 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 right.
Eduardo
It's
thinks he's just
moving.
like,
It's
yeah,
moving right now. Yeah.
yeah. And
Um,
so they're just kind of in
and I
different
forget he
on
needs
different
like this month
wavelengths.
this amount for startup, and he's like your CFO or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, and then they just kind of agree to it, and then Mark just starts getting started, and it's just a lot of montages of him like writing code and shit, and then like the Winklevosses are like emailing him a lot, and um,
Hmm.
I love it when like I love the Winklevoss's attorney. Who plays the Winklevoss's attorney? David Selby
Yep.
plays Gage. That's the name. That's his name,
Yep.
Gage.
Gage.
Because I know, yeah, you're right. It is. It's definitely him. Because I know they say that I know who Mark's attorney is because they say Psy a lot.
Sigh, yeah.
When yeah,
And
they're like
Gage says
Psy.
that, yeah, sigh, like controller
Yeah,
or
right.
something. Yeah.
But like Gage kind of goes like, "You're misleading my clients to believe you were building Harvard Connection." You know, like just the way he's like accusing him of things all the time, the way he's clearly like an old school East Coast lawyer, as well.
Yeah, yeah. He's a perfect type of lawyer for these guys. And then Sai is he definitely seems more
He
like
seems like
looser in
laid
a way.
back, like
Yeah.
yeah, I know. He's like
I like Sai.
he's
Yeah.
so he's so chill the whole time. Like, what is he? He asks at one point, he's like, "What celebrity was it?" Like, they're
No
like, "Does
reason.
it?"
Yeah.
They're like, "Does it matter?" He's like, "No reason." He's like,
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, you're pretty chill right now. Your client is the one being sued in all these cases." Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Sai's great. Yeah. But I forgot about that moment. What celebrity? Which, by the way, that celebrity was Natalie Portman, apparently.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yes. And I was just reading up because I was curious about that too,
Because she
actually.
went
I
to
was like,
Harvard, right?
yeah. And apparently Aaron Sorkin like talked to her just for her experience of like being at Harvard at that time.
Oh,
Because, she I guess, just knew some things about it just from being around there, but yeah. And this was around the time that she was also shooting, the prequels for Star Wars. So
She was going to Harvard
she
and
was,
shooting the prequels.
yeah. I mean, what's more prestigious? I think it's the prequels, but that's just me. But yeah, anyway, I'm getting off track here.
Yeah, I feel. Oh, there's also another thing in the commentary that was pointed out, like by someone about like differences in production design, like when there's like when they're doing the depositions in like on the East Coast, it's clearly like all this like old school like mahogany like books and like old like wood and stuff, and then like when they're doing them on the West Coast, it's like just glass pretty
Yeah.
much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. It
that's
looks
something
like
I
a
never
tech
noticed.
office. Yeah, I didn't notice that
Mm-hmm.
until you just said it. Yeah. It definitely looks like all these tech offices out here where it's just, yeah, everything's glass and see through and like pristine. Um, yeah, interesting.
Yeah. um yeah, so yeah, he keeps like not emailing the Winklevosses back
Mm-hmm.
pretty much. And I don't know. I guess meanwhile the site keeps growing. At one point, he asks like, I think he asks Eduardo for more money at one point. Like, and also at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, Eduardo's like he keeps like doing all the stuff for the Phoenix while Mark's building the site. So
Yeah.
and then
Mm-hmm.
he's like, Mark, I got punched by the Phoenix, and then he's like, oh really? And then he brings up the idea, and then in the next scene he's like, I made the first cut, and um he's like, oh yeah, don't feel bad if you don't make it any further than that.
Yeah. Yeah, really, really discouraging to it.
Just
Um,
very passive aggressive, like clearly cares about it.
yeah.
um but and he just asks Eduardo for more money, and I forget what he does. He like explains like he needs the more money for the traffic or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
And it all is just something I don't understand either. But yeah, it is crazy that all he needs for that is like $200.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like seems so cheap at the time. Yeah.
It just sounds so crazy what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he's still like avoiding the Winklevosses, and then meanwhile they're still like back, going over that whole timeline, and like the fact that he hasn't like answered a single email of theirs. And then um Cameron case like Cameron's like, all right, it's okay, but we do need to meet before we go on for break.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah.
yeah, and then eventually he like raises that concern about the whole idea, and then they kind of like go after him for that. um
Yeah, because it's like
and then there's
he's ghosting them for so long, and then all of a sudden,
right,
out of nowhere, he has like these big issues with it. Um,
right.
yeah,
And then I think that's when they start to really make in the deposition scenes where they're really starting to make the accusation of that he stole the idea, and he starts to get like he find like he's been like drawing the whole time during the deposition scene, and he finally like he's like do you think I deserve your attention? Or like maybe that might be later, but either way it's good to bring up now since we're on this
hmm
subject. And he's like, you deserve this much of my attention, like, yeah. He's like, if your clients had invented Facebook, they would have invented Facebook.
yeah,
Um, and like just kind of flexes the fact that he's part of this like incredibly innovative company, filled with like really creative tech centric minds that the Winklevosses are just clearly not. And it just kind of like offends him that he's just being like sued for
yeah.
this in general.
He's
Yeah,
just like looking off to the side too, like
right.
yeah,
But even though there is a clear connection, that he like ignored, that they came up to with him to a business with a business venture, said he would do it, and he did something similar, along the same lines, So you do also see like the Winklevi's like point of view, even though like, in the end, like Mark Zuckerberg's a genius and they're not.
Yeah, because they like, you stole our whole idea, and he says like Friendster for Harvard or something like that,
Right,
for Harvard
right,
students,
right,
like something
right.
insulting
Mm-hmm.
to like their idea.
Right.
Which was, I mean, just story wise, like what they had in mind was a much smaller scale thing than what he had in mind. But
Yeah, well, their whole thing was based off like girls want to date guys who go to Harvard, just like the biggest like
yeah,
douchey thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
which I don't know, not growing up in like New England or around that, like I've never known that to be a thing, that girls want to get with guys from Harvard.
I know, maybe around there it fucking is. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe in Boston that's how it is. But yeah, I think then that like event, like he launches the site with Eduardo like later, after like adding that relationship status thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
Which I do like how that was sort of tied into it, was when who was it? Someone was
when
asking
Dustin Moskowitz kind of,
that.
from Jurassic
Yes.
Park, he kind of walks up to him while he's like asleep in a computer room, and he's like, "Do you know if she's dating anyone in your
Yeah.
Spanish class?" And he just kind of runs home immediately, and yeah, he adds that, and then he's like, "It's ready," and then he just launches it, and I love how it also said like Andrew Garfield sees that it like it says like a Mark Zuckerberg production, but it also like has Eduardo's like name on it,
On the
and he
masthead.
says
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
right, and he says like, you have no idea what that's gonna mean to my father. It's just like it really just adds to like the character. It's like that. It's like another thing that Sorkin does really well. Everyone's just motivations are pretty clearly defined.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I forget, I guess just Facebook after that kind of starts blowing up around campus a little bit. And then the
Mm-hmm.
Winklevi find out. There's that great scene where Divya is like watching the like choir sing, and
Oh
the
yeah, yeah,
girl
yeah.
is just on, like, she's
The
like,
Facebook.
someone just sent me this link, and then she clicks on it, and he's like, what? And then he just like trips on the chairs in the middle of like this performance that like no one's watching. And he comes on the Winklevi, who are like having a really intense like row session.
Wait, do you wait, it's funny you keep saying the Winklevi, like it's their it sounds like that's like the plural form of Winklevoss.
Yeah,
No way.
I think I heard
Is that
Fincher
really it?
say it. I think I heard Fincher say it in the
Wow, that's
commentary.
the Winklevi. That's interesting.
Yeah,
Wow.
the Winklevi.
I thought you
Yeah,
just
I
made
think
like you
that's.
just made that up on the spot. Yeah, that's
I think
funny.
you can say that. I think that's okay to say. But what's also funny, do you remember the shot of like, after he finds out, um, and then Divya kind of runs over the bridge,
Mm-hmm.
like to the where the Winklevi are like working out. Apparently, that was shot like they did like, I don't know, 8 to 10 takes or something, like a ridiculous amount of takes of him just running across that bridge. And he ended up
Really?
Max ended up like throwing up like the whole rest of the day because of that.
Jeez.
Yeah, no,
I
just
don't
for that
even
like one
I don't even
thing.
remember that like little moment that well.
It's just like a transition, like establishing shot to where he's like running to tell
Wow.
Tyler and Cameron about that. Um but anyways, he tells them, and then they immediately like get on the phones with like, it just seems like they don't really say who, but it just seems like their parents, slash their parents like lawyers. You know what I mean? It just seems like it's all revolved around their connections through growing up there.
Yep.
Yeah. And they're like emphasizing things like must have a Harvard EDU to register. They're like, that is exactly what we said, you
Yeah.
know.
The most important part is harvard.edu. It's the most
Right,
prestigious
right, right,
URL. Yeah.
right, right. Yeah. And then I think like kind of after that shortly they're at that like Bill Gates speaker thing.
Mm.
And Brenda's song gets introduced, and I just love this exchange with Andrew Garfield. He's like, "Is that Mark Zuckerberg? Did she invent Facebook?" And he's like,
Mm.
Yeah, it's kind of both of ours. We both did."
Yeah.
And then she's like, "Facebook me and we'll grab a drink." like, like that's how they're gonna immediately get in contact with each other. Facebook me after this.
Facebook me. Yeah. Yeah, that's how they introduced like the Facebook me thing. And that's
Yeah.
showing that like how much it's like really taken
Yeah, it's like
off.
such a flex that like a girl is like knows about him, like they're famous on campus for inventing this thing, this way, you know, like kind of a, you know, this social device, and then she's like, "Oh yeah, let's talk on that site after this." You know?
Yeah. And then right after that too is when you see more of like where Mark's clout has gone, where they see those three guys outside and they're like,
Yeah,
"Yeah,
yeah.
you're Zuckerberg, right?" It's like, yeah,
Right.
like, oh man, they say you're gonna be like the next Bill Gates. And who's that? Wait,
I swear he was looking at you when he said the next Bill Gates is
yeah,
in
yeah.
that room. Yeah, and what's funny is like Eduardo and Mark clearly just like hang out with each other still, still, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, they
Um,
really do, yeah.
but then they go back to the dorm and like, and Eduardo's still telling Mark about the girls. He's like, these girls want to meet us for drinks, like it's
Mm-hmm.
the biggest deal. And then he sees the letter that says that the Winklevosses are suing him. And while he's reading it, Mark's like, "So, what are the girls' names?" You
What are
know,
their
trying to
names? Yeah.
distract him. Yeah, and Eduardo's like, Eduardo's clearly like so out of, you know, the loop, you know, in this situation. He's like, they're suing you for intellectual property fraud. He's like,
Yeah.
what? He's like,
Yeah, and Mark's just playfully trying to play it off.
right, right. And
Yeah.
he's like, they had an idea, I had a better one. And also going with the fact like that, what, like there's that other line we've brought up twice already, where like if you were the inventors of Facebook, you would have invented Facebook. He says this line where it's like, everyone who has built a chair doesn't have to pay
Yeah.
royalties. Someone who builds a nice chair doesn't have to pay royalties to everyone who's built this chair. Like I like that line a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
um,
Sorkin really has a lot of these great one-liners that's why
yeah,
Mark
yeah.
Zuckerberg, like the real person, probably thinks this movie is cool now. Is because it makes him look
Oh yeah,
like he's so
because he
quick-witted
has,
and stuff.
well, because
Yeah.
he's very eloquent. Yeah, he's very quick witted. He's eloquent. Like he just, yeah, yeah. And when we see Mark Zuckerberg now, like on the internet, like or in interviews, he does not
He's like,
speak like this at all. Yeah, he's
it's
really
about
weird.
connecting with people. Yeah.
Right, 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 right. He like just kind of tells Eduardo, "It's not a big deal, Eduardo. We've settled it already," or something like that. Because he
Yeah,
sends them like I think a letter or something like that, which is like a bunch of bullshit. But like, I guess he sent a letter or something like that that Eduardo reads. Yeah. But then he's like, so where he gets basically gets him to forget about it. So he's like, who are the girls? And he's like, they want to have drinks tonight. Like, it's so good. And then they go to the bar and they're getting head in the bathroom or making out and having sex, whatever, doing all sorts of shit in the stalls. Um, and there's great music during that scene too. And then one of my favorite things in the whole movie is after this, when they're standing outside the bathroom, and a dude walks up, and he's trying to use the men's bathroom, and Andrew Garfield is like, "Hey man, there's some girls cleaning up in there," like in a way, like like he doesn't say it too confidently either, but he says it like confidently enough to be like, "That's my girls in there," and
Yeah.
the dude's like
Nice.
nice. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Sick, bro.
I love how they're just standing there, and it's like, I don't know, the situation they're in currently is just so foreign and has clearly never happened to them. It's just it's almost like not real to them.
Yeah, yeah. That's one of the only times you see Mark like smile uh
Yeah,
during this
yeah,
too.
yeah.
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 And then he interrupts Eduardo and goes to see Erica to see if she's been on the
Yeah,
site
yeah.
because she happens to be there
Hmm.
too.
Right. He kind of asks if she can talk, and she doesn't want to talk to him because he talked about her on his blog and said all these nasty things.
Hmm.
Um, Also, something we didn't mention from the beginning is that all those like blog posts, Sorkin like had access to those. So
Oh,
he
really?
had access to like Zuckerberg's blog. So he like that is all very accurate, I guess.
Hmm. Wow.
And him blogging about Erica, I guess. And I think that was the main inspiration for making Erica the, like, I don't know, kind of uh, the soul or draw or the main thing of this, the main thing driving the character of Mark Zuckerberg during this movie. Yeah.
Wow. Dang.
Um, and then I think like she hasn't, yeah, it somehow comes up. He comes to realize that she hasn't heard of Facebook, and that she also, that really sticks out to him, especially since she's also saying that she doesn't, that you're still an asshole, Mark, because you blogged about me after I called you an asshole. You said all these shitty things about me. You know what I mean? And but it really, like, I think he filters this through the fact that she hasn't heard of Facebook. So then he comes back to Eduardo, and Eduardo's like thinking, that was a good thing, man. You just went over there and apologized. That was the right thing.
Yeah.
You're the big man. That was the right thing to do. And Mark just looks at him, and this is also another one of my favorite things in the movie. He just goes, "We need to expand," and he's clearly off in another place, and he just walks off.
Yeah, that is a great moment too.
Yeah, they go
From
back to
there,
the
that
dorm.
line leads them into everything that happens next, pretty much.
Right. Yeah, they go back to the dorm, and like Dustin's there, and he's like, "Who are the girls?" like cuz like we never have girls here. Like, what's this? And he kind of divvies up control over the company. He's like, Dustin is head of programming, and um his half will come out of my end, and his other roommate will be head of like marketing and publicity, and his share will amount to the amount of work he actually ends up doing, which I think is a funny line. Just, I don't know, in college there are so many like wild card like people, like the amount of like flaky college friends I remember having, the amount of times I flaked on things in college. I relate to that a lot. And I think Eduardo says, like, towards the end, he's like, Stanford. He's like, we got to get this thing to Stanford. Um, and then that's when we first meet Sean Parker, who has woken up next to Dakota Johnson.
Yeah.
And they had a one night stand, and they clearly don't know each other at all. And he's like, and she's like, I just slept with Sean Parker, and he's like, I'm an entrepreneur, and he's just like sitting
Hmm.
there. He's just sitting there like this. He's like, I'm an entrepreneur.
He's so like this character is so perfectly fits that like so he started a Napster when he's 19, so he's like never had
Yeah,
like an
yeah.
actual like
Right,
job, and
right.
he's just so um yeah, it's like he's the guy that's still hanging around college even when he's like graduated
Yeah,
college, and
right, right.
everyone's like, what are you doing here? Yeah, that's but then there are some people where it seems like wow, that's like really cool, but yeah, this
He's
is first.
semi McConaughey and like Dazed and Confused to a
Yeah.
degree, but he's also like really creative like people person too. Like I find it funny that he's like there's a lot of things I notice like he says he's broke, but yet you see him always out. Like he goes to that like one restaurant where they first meet him at, and I can only imagine that like they play off that restaurant like it's got to be the one of the most high end Chinese restaurants in New York City. So
Hmm.
he's eating there. He looks like he took care of the bill, and then you see him clubbing and drinking throughout the movie. So it just seems like he's just like really well connected. Like that's the only thing I can think of. Yeah, so he's like, even though he's got a lot of sketch elements, like Sean Parker's clearly like got a big personality and like got a lot like of likability to him. Like Dakota Johnson didn't sleep with him because he's Sean Parker. She slept with him because he's just a naturally like likable guy.
Yeah. I think likable in the sense that he's manipulative, and
Yeah,
like
that
yeah,
too.
like this whole dynamic kind of reminded me of Michael Scott and Ryan when Ryan goes to New York and he's VP. Like Ryan is Sean Parker and Michael Scott is Jesse Eisenberg,
Right,
and he's
right,
like
right,
so like oh like everything he does is so cool. But really like a lot I
right.
felt like a lot of what Sean Parker is doing is because like deep inside him he's like this broke like guy that made it big, and he's sort of like
Yeah. He's got
delusional
nothing
now.
left. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like
That's
riding off of the Napster success, and then I don't know, I guess the
yeah.
Facebook thing is like really pulls him out of like I don't know, the nothingness, probably the emptiness that he probably had.
Yeah, yeah. And so this is him
Because
trying to like act like he is, I don't know, he can like mentor Mark in
right,
some
right.
way, like to give him some sort of like purpose, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Um yeah, because yeah, he sees that newspaper headline about he reads about Facebook. He's like, I just need to find you, Mark Zuckerberg. And I think then like you see Mark and Eduardo are talking about like monetizing the site and the plans for the some like I think they go to New York to do the advertising to try to get advertisements, and Mark doesn't want to because he wants it to be a clean ad-free site.
Mm,
um like yeah, because he's not in it for like money at all. He's like he wants his baby to be just completely like stripped of anything else. He sees Facebook as like his work of art, so he doesn't want like ads to be like interrupting it.
hmm.
It's like a really different mentality. But um and then they meet with Sean in New York, and there's like another great montage of them like dining it up. Um, and Sean has like he's like just going off about how he funded how what happened with Napster. He's like, I don't even remember what he says fully, but it's clearly he's like BSing a lot. And he's got like that, he knows how to talk and everything.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, well, he
yeah,
goes through that story too of the guy who started Victoria's Secret. It's
right, right,
almost like a sales tactic. Like he's using this to like
yeah,
motivate Mark to, go along with him. Where he's like,
right.
he sold the company for $3 million. A year later, it was worth 500 million, and he jumped off the Golden Gate
Right,
Bridge.
right. It's like
Yeah.
yeah, it's like his it's like yeah, this quick like I don't know, fable he brings up. You know who
Mm-hmm.
that was? The inventor. Oh, isn't that from? No, that's a different one. He brings up like, yeah, he brings that up in like the club, yeah, where they're like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
shouting. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
can't hear shit. Yeah, it's
Right, right, right. That's like a really realistic club scene, like just the sound mixing of it, because
yeah,
you can barely hear the dialogue in it. Um, yeah, you almost have to like, you almost feel like you have to turn your TV up during that scene, but like then the club music gets incredibly loud.
yeah. That's an
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah, I guess I don't have any like anecdote for that, but it's just like interesting setting for that conversation, and I'm wondering
yeah,
like um, why that, like why they chose that like loud club, because that seems like a purposeful thing to
yeah,
like make
yeah,
make it so it's like hard to hear, and
for sure.
maybe that's like a part of Sean's like tactics in a way. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. It also is a scene like where, because during that dinner scene, it's like there's clearly like a tug and pull between Eduardo and Sean about um, who's really gonna run the business end of this company. Because like Sean comes with like a total like business mentality, and then he ends the dinner by saying like you're in for a billion dollars, as like Eduardo says in like the deposition. They cut immediately to the deposition scene where Eduardo's like a
A
billion
billion.
dollars.
Yeah, you know what's cool? It's not $1 million. A billion. Yeah, a billion or $1 million is cool. You know what's even cooler? When
Yeah,
he's like $1 billion.
and that's what he said. It's like, and that's what you guys are headed for, a
Yeah,
billion dollars.
$1 billion.
And it's just funny because it's so overwhelming for these college kids because they're already at this restaurant questioning whether they're gonna get carded or not, and they're like, so they're still kids, and Sean comes and he asks Brenda Song, it's like, what would you like to drink? Just singles her out immediately. So
Yeah.
it's almost immediately like, all right, he's already working this girl.
Hmm.
And then she's like, an appletini. And yeah, she's just
He's
like,
like
he's just kind
Appletinis
of
all
work.
around. Yeah.
All right, appletini's all around. Yeah. He's like,
Yeah,
you
he's
guys
just
have,
like laying down the power moves like
well, doesn't he
immediately.
gets to the restaurant. He goes like, you guys don't have anything like on your
Yeah.
table. You know what
Yeah.
I
And
mean?
he's late too, so that's like all a part of it too.
Right, right, it
Like,
is.
do you know who he
And
is?
kind
He's
of,
25 minutes late. That's what he is. Yeah.
right, right, right. And the host is kind of like escorts him in, and it looks like, I don't know, he's like familiar with the hostess or has like slept with the hostess or something like that.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
just
clear,
know him.
or he's just been there a billion times for other
Hmm.
meetings similar where he's like $1 billion. He says that to everyone.
Yeah, it's like this is
um,
his usual spot. His usual setup is right there. So
mhm.
they're used to it.
Yeah. But yeah, great scene. It's also great like production design of the restaurant, just like all the colors and like the flags in the background. It just feels like you're like, I don't know, looks like a restaurant I would like to try for sure.
Yeah. Um,
Um, so I think next
well, this is when he's also like convincing him to go to California.
yeah, he's like, tell him he has to go to California. Um, And I think eventually Mark just does go to California and on Eduardo's like dime. And like
Hmm.
then while they're like deciding they're like all shit, it's like him and Dustin and like maybe
A couple
like
other
they're
like
still running Facebook, yeah.
programmers. Yeah.
But then that's when Eduardo gets the animal cruelty, like the animal cruelty like
Mm-hmm.
paperwork comes in, and he's like, "Don't fish, eat other fish, the trout and the trout," or something like that. uh, and they also bring it up during the deposition scene as well. Um, but and they're also Mark Jesse Eisenberg's asking for the money to go out there for the summer, while Eduardo goes looking for advertisements in New York.
Yeah, he has like an internship in New
He
York.
has an
Something,
internship,
yeah.
yeah, and he's looking for advertising. I mean, look at this fucking adult ass man. Like, he's, what is he, like 20 or something, and he's out
Yeah,
there like hustling in New York, like off of his like oil futures money or whatever.
yeah, and then I part of this I love too when they're in California is that's when they really get into like the oh he's wired in right now like
Yeah, yeah,
that'll
yeah, yeah. Here we skipped one scene that I want to cover. It's before California. It's the internship tryout scene. Um,
mm-hmm.
and so he's like, yeah, he's trying to get interns for Facebook, and of course every nerd or computer nerd on campus is trying out, and it all has to do with drinking, um, and I don't know, they have to like code a bunch of shit while taking shots or something like
Yeah,
that,
it's
and
like
everyone's like,
every 10 lines of code you take a drink
right,
or you chug a beer or something like that. Yeah.
yeah, and then the dude wins, and Mark checks over all his work, and he just goes like, welcome to Facebook, and everyone cheers.
Welcome to
And
Facebook.
yeah, welcome to Facebook. And it's just, it's like that first moment, like where it feels like they are now the social scene at Harvard.
hmm
Like, like that, like the opening party scene that we said is just insane and crazy. Like, they finally made it to that, like their version of that. They are what's cool on campus, because that scene is just like, it is just a bunch of people programming there, but that scene's fucking cool. It's fucking rules, that scene.
Yeah, it's everybody wants to be a part of it now
Well, yeah,
because
as they're
it's
cheering, and like Zuckerberg's just standing there in the middle of it all, kind of going like this. Yeah, that's so cool. I think that might be one of the covers of the film as well.
yeah, when
Um,
he like looks over at
yeah,
Eduardo, that's like
right.
that shot.
Yeah. And that's when Eduardo also gives him like, I set up an account with, I don't know, this many amount of money, and he's like, can that get you through the summer? And then then he gets the intern. Yeah,
hmm
yeah, such a good friend, Eduardo.
Yeah, he really
Um,
is. Yeah.
right? I set up a bank account for you and our roommates to live in California for the summer.
Yeah.
Will that work for you?
Yeah, you college kids. Yeah.
Right. And then we cut to California, and then like Dustin's like flying off the roof into the pool, and they're
Classic
already like,
Dustin. Yeah.
yeah, they're already breaking shit, and like Justin Timberlake kind of already knocks on the door, and he's like, we just saw something fall off the roof.
Want to make sure
Is
you're
everything
okay.
okay?
Yeah.
Right, right. No, apparently he was there across the street. I mean, who knows? I've always questioned how accurate that is.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Whether he was actually across the street. I mean, with this girl who seems pretty young as well.
hmm
Um, he's so wired on whatever he's been
Yeah,
doing that
he's not even like
like
focusing on
like
yeah.
like the way he yeah, the way he's like, he gives them the tour of the house, and it's like clearly like mayhem in there, and then like he's like, you want a beer? Like immediately he hands Sean a beer, and then he like tosses her. She's like, no thanks. Then he tosses the beer, it breaks. He's like, oh, sorry, and then he just throws another one.
Does the same
He's
thing.
and he's like so confused, like when that second bottle breaks. He's just like,
Yeah,
and
that's so great.
that's according with the wired in thing too. Like I assume being wired in puts you in such a different headspace that you're I don't know, you're just not thinking the same anymore. You're so in your head that like you're just not aware of anything. And that's the same scene where Eduardo kind of comes to the house, and he realizes Sean's there. And
hmm
he's like, what the fuck? Like, this is all this is all happening on my dime.
Yeah.
And Sean's also clearly trying to take over the company that I co-own. Yeah, he's saying that I think advertising wasn't going well in New York, and I think he quit his internship, and he wants to be out there fully. And I guess Brenda's song is like crazy now.
She's really
Yeah,
she's like, where
really.
have you been? Jealous.
She's got a lot of jealous problems.
Yeah.
And I forget. Mark says something about what Sean set up meetings with like investors, I guess, to invest like 500K or something like that. Like venture capitalist.
Peter Thiel.
Yeah, and Eduardo's like, why is he setting up meetings? And Mark just clearly does not understand like why Eduardo's mad at all. He's just clearly in his own world. Yeah, I don't believe he's at this point like trying to fuck Eduardo over necessarily, like right in that scene at least, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
I think he's just oblivious.
He's trying. I think he's very oblivious in that. Yeah.
It's where he doesn't really get other people's emotions in a way.
Right. And I think we like, and also, all right, I think while this is happening, the Winklevosses like they lose in that boating, because we're still building to their decision to actually sue Mark Zuckerberg because they haven't done it yet. And so then there's that awesome rowing crew scene in a very prestigious like match. I don't know what to call any of this stuff. But they lose by like a hair, and it shows them just furious. And it also shows Divya it cuts to Divya, and he's like, ugh, and it kind of like, it just kind of shows how they all feel in general, just still about like Zuckerberg and everything that's happened. And then they have like those talks after with all the parents or administrators or whatever, and they're like, wow, that race was so closest race I've ever seen. And he's like, yes sir, it was very close. And they just feel so bad about it. And then I think at the end of the scene is where they're finally like, all right, we'll sue him. And then I think Tyler Cameron says, let's gut the freaking nerd.
Good God.
Yeah, it's such a spot on line. Let's gut the freaking nerd. Mark calls Andrew Garfield after Brenda Song has like just burned something in his apartment. It's really scary.
Yeah.
Something on fire.
Yeah.
It's a really scary scene where he's just in his like Manhattan studio, and she just like walks in like out of the dark, and she's just like terrifying the way she walks in. And then she has that line, tell me the creator of Facebook doesn't know how to change his relationship status on Facebook. And yeah, she burns the thing. And while he's like putting it out, he's also on the phone with Mark, and because I think he froze their account.
That's right. Yeah.
Which kind of froze the site. And he's like, if Facebook shuts down, we shut down, or something, like we do not shut down ever, or something like that. And I think that's really what triggers him, because it's really about like obviously there was all the stuff with the Phoenix that really like Mark gave a lot of disrespect towards Eduardo, but I think the shutting down of the account thing is really what triggers what follows next, because Mark's in his own like world, he's like in a sandbox playing with blocks, and then they're taken away from him, that sort of thing. And someone disrupts all of it, but so then Eduardo apologized while he's still putting like that out, whatever's on fire out, and He's like, I'm really sorry, blah, blah, I shouldn't have done it. I needed to get your attention. And then he makes an announcement that he needs him to get out there to sign paperwork because they did something. I forget what it is.
I think that's when, so they get the 500,000
Yeah.
investment, and because of that, then they have to, like, I don't know, rearrange everybody's
I guess,
shares for
yeah,
some
I
reason.
guess the 500,000 investment makes them on track to be big enough to be the billion-dollar company, I guess, is what their projection is.
Hmm.
And so he's like, Eduardo, I need my CFO. And he's like, Eduardo, we did it. And then, it's a big like moment. And then Eduardo turns around and he realizes Brenda's song is still there after all of that. And she's like, is everything okay? And he's like, yes. Also, I'm breaking up with you. Oh, it's so good.
I think that's a
Um,
great, like, just like a great little, I don't know, comedic moment too that Sorkin threw in there about how important like their relationship status is, because just,
right, right.
us being a young age when Facebook was just starting, like middle
Yeah.
school and high school, that was like a big like insecurity with people was their relationship status on Facebook.
Hmm.
So yeah, and then that
Yeah.
tying into it,
It meant
so funny.
everything.
Hmm. Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, so then also relevant, it was funny when Mark says we don't crash ever, because
Right.
just like a month ago Facebook and
It
Instagram was
crashed.
down for like a
Oh
whole day.
yeah. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was kind of a nice
I
a
remember
nice
I
break.
just couldn't. I was like, I can't get on Instagram today.
Yeah. Yeah.
God
uh,
damn it.
but yeah, then yeah, he's like, we I need my CFO, and he's like
Yeah.
buttering up to him only to
And then he has that meeting with those
destroy
two
him.
guys, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you do that to dilute things when other investors come in." And they're like, "I just love working with business majors."
Yeah.
And he's
Yeah.
like, economics actually.
Yeah, and that's a huge scene
Yeah, he
where
signs and he signs the papers, and then it cuts to him at the deposition, and he's like, it was a big mistake for me not to read the documents when I was signing them, and without my lawyer reading them. And he's like, honestly, I thought they were my lawyers, and they're
yeah,
not. Yeah, clearly not at all.
I think that's like important for the story too, to show like these are because I can see myself in the same situation, not really understanding that and thinking that these guys are on my side. Like, he's just a
Right.
college
Yeah.
kid. He thinks that these guys are on his side, his lawyers
Right.
helping him
Like
out.
if
But
a buddy of mine gave me paperwork like to read based off something we did, like if say Cinebums, um, suddenly we got a $500,000
well,
investment
Luke, I do
by
have
a
something to
venture
tell you
by
after we
by
stop
a venture
recording.
capitalist,
But
and you
yeah,
gave me the paperwork. I wouldn't think much of it. I'm sure I would read it heavily, but I would definitely trust John mistakenly that that the paperwork is fine.
well, as long as you don't freeze the Cinebums accounts, you're good. Yeah, so don't worry about that.
Yeah.
That's yeah, this is where I really love how they jump back and forth from like the deposition to
Yeah.
where you see Eduardo, clearly something's wrong in
Right.
that Silicon Valley office
In
with all
that
the
paperwork.
glass,
Yep.
and then he
And
just turns around and
and then he says you had one friend.
yeah, yeah,
which is
that was your
which
one
is
friend.
also a great, like, I think they've played on that with like maybe the cover, um like, I don't know, title, like uh like posters for this, like the fact that the creator of Facebook, about getting friend, you've getting friend requests and stuff, has one friend in general.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he lives
um
in like on the internet and that's where his only friends are, apparently,
right.
essentially.
um and there's some stuff between there, but eventually, we get to the scene where they're in that big, like, they're now in like a corporate office, and there are more investors now in the company, and he sees that there's paperwork for him to sign, and he sees that his shares have been diluted, and that's when there's that great I don't know, it's just great in the deposition room where they're like, how much, what were Sean Parker's shares diluted down to? He's like, there wasn't. And like, what were Mark Zuckerberg's shares diluted down to? It wasn't. And you're like, what were your shares diluted down to? And he says 0.001% or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's just like a gut punch.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think the theme from the beginning, like that melancholy, like sad, like piano music starts playing again.
Yeah, it's not just this like celebration of inventing Facebook, and like it's like the ramifications of someone inventing something that becomes something becoming bigger than you can even imagine. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then that's where we get that very iconic now iconic tracking shot like of in front of Andrew Garfield as he like walks to Mark. Yeah, it's so good. And
Mark,
and then he's wired in, and he smashes it. It's like, huh? How about now? He's still wired in? Which is actually, I saw this one meme or video or whatever once on Instagram where, like, because I follow so many movie things, as do you, as probably, and as does the Cinebums page. So every time I'm on Instagram, it's just the amount of movie shit content that comes up is ridiculous, and I love it. But it was kind of this thing where, like, this video that someone splooshed together, and it's kind of something that we've been trying to do more of lately, kind of on our YouTube and Instagram pages, where you're kind of like splooshing movies together. They kind of shows a character like in a movie, like listening to music or something like that, like or musical moments in a movie, and then it cuts immediately to Andrew Garfield like smashing the laptop, cutting them out of their music, and he's like, huh, how about now? Still wired in? And it's just like, and it's just, I don't know, every example it showed, it got funnier. So now I have this like, I don't know, kind of like comedic view of I just laugh whenever I see it. That just one cut to Andrew Garfield. How about now? Still wired in? Like, which is probably not how most people view it, but it actually is pretty funny.
No, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he just kind of yelling at Mark, and there's kind of like a triangle between them and Sean Parker, and Sean's like, we will get the signature or something like that.
And what did he like tries to hand him something too, and it's like as an insult to Eduardo.
I forget what it is.
But then he just goes
lunges at and Sean's legit like that, which is funny because it finally showed, he's known that Sean's a coward the whole movie, and he kind of finally tests it out, and
it's just like validating for him, like, okay, if I'm gonna be like booted out like this, at least can I just like prove that I was right about this guy.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And he gets escorted out by security, and then I think they finally hit like 1 million whatever, like, members on Facebook or something like that. And Sean's like, yeah, all right, this is it, guys. And Mark is not happy with Sean at all for what he did. And then it's the scene where he's like, we will live on the internet, where Sean's still envisioning all this going on. And I love how when the cops come in too, and like they notice he has like cocaine on his hand, and he's immediately like, that's not mine. And it's funny because he's the oldest one in the room by far, so it's just so obvious that has to be his,
Yeah, right.
he gets put into jail, and then he's talking to Mark on the phone, and yeah, it's hard to. It's almost like alluded to that like Mark set like called the cops on him, like got him arrested or something like that, or
Mm-hmm.
it's like I don't know. I've always read that scene. I've read that scene two different ways. It's like it's partly like that I don't know, maybe like Mark was going after Sean, or partly just now he's like in a really dark place because Sean ended up being everything Eduardo said that he was, and now Mark is all alone.
Yeah.
As they like cut, as they show his like card, and it says "I'm CEO, bitch," and like, it's like now he's like, it's like now he's like an adult in the real world. Like before, it was all fun and games, and now it's kind of the irony of showing that "I'm CEO, bitch" card is like
Mm-hmm.
rings really true. Like, it's not cool. None of it is cool anymore. It's all gotten very real with real world ramifications.
Yeah, and he's basically not afraid to like burn bridges in
Yeah,
any
yeah,
way.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of the end of like
It's the end
almost
of like all the
everything.
excitement. Yeah, yeah. It's
Right.
now
Yeah, it
it's we're
is.
just like
And
settling down. Yeah.
well, now he's just like sitting in the deposition room on the computer, and then Rashida Jones gives like her big, makes her money in the next scene.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why she's there is, to connect with Mark, because no one has really the whole film.
Mm-hmm.
And no one has connected to him on a human level. I mean, like everyone else kind of has more so on a like a innovator or a capitalist kind of level, that sort of thing. Um,
Mm-hmm. She says
um,
something about she's like, I don't think you're a bad guy, but
right.
like something. Yeah. I don't.
She says like, "You're not an asshole, Mark. You just try so hard to be." Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of how the movie ends, and then he kind of just he starts clicking on Erica Albright's Facebook
Refreshing the
page
page.
and
Yeah.
refreshing it and we're kind of just left with that. And I forget what song it plays. It's maybe a song by the Beatles or somebody, but it's like, "Baby,
Hmm.
you're a rich man, baby, you're a rich," something like that. When we cut to
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
credits.
That's it. Yeah. Baby, you're a rich man. Yeah.
By who?
The Beatles. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nice. I figured it was
Good
the
call.
Beatles, because who the hell else sounds like that? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
man. That's
But
the social
that is it.
network.
Yeah.
Yeah. Quite a film. Yeah. And man, yeah, I think I like this movie even more so after watching it this time. Yeah,
Oh, yeah. It's
it just paced so well, moves along so
mhm.
quickly, and everything
Mhm.
is just so, I don't know, compelling in a way that yeah, I don't think I'll get tired of this movie.
Yeah, it's
Hmm.
so good, and I love how every actor here is like also in their prime. They're all like super young. They're like just getting started. It has yeah, it has all that youthful energy, but yet they're all like the best actors at the top of their game. Um, and like how it's a Fincher movie, but it's like unlike any other Fincher movie, like which is also
Hmm.
why it's like my favorite Fincher movie. Uh, yeah, and I still think I'll argue with anyone that this is the best Sorkin script. I think most people view it that way. Um,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just crazy how it all came together, like Sorkin and Fincher, and yeah, these like Jesse Eisenberg was like born to play this type of
Hmm.
role. So yeah, it's
Yeah, and to work in like this script with this kind of dialogue, like if you listen to Jesse Eisenberg talk ever normally outside of a movie, he talks at this speed actually that the
yeah.
movie does. Like so this is pretty in his wheelhouse. Like yeah.
I don't know if this was in so I saw some like YouTube videos of like Sorkin talking about it, and I don't know if this was in the same thing you watched, but he's like, there's so many like uhs and like dashes and ellipses like with Mark's dialogue, and for most
Oh
actors that's
yeah.
like really tough to do, but Jesse Eisenberg, it's like so natural and easy
Yeah,
to
well,
just
and, yeah, and he wants
yeah
everyone to get all the uhs and the pauses. Yeah, it's really
hmm
yeah, which would be very hard for an
yes
actor. Yeah. Uh, but yeah, as someone who's like trying to move to California to go do stuff, I love this movie. Like it's like perfect. Like it's not only like it's not only therapy, but it's also like fuel at the same time.
yeah. You know, like the we didn't talk about the soundtrack too much, which I love. We might have had that in as a soundtrack episode. We might have talked about
I
this, but
I haven't, I don't think, but
oh, hmm,
we could have it
maybe
now.
I did.
Yeah, maybe you
But yeah,
did.
like you're talking about when that one when they start like working on things and that one song starts playing and it's like very like fast and like driving. It's like yeah, that's
Yep,
like
yep,
oh, I feel like
exactly, and
we're
just
all here in the room together trying to figure this out, and yeah, it's
yeah, yeah, we're all here trying to figure this out.
yeah, it's like
Right.
that music is just like very driving and like motivating in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, and it manages to be very motivating when you're just seeing a bunch of guys just sitting on computers typing
Yeah.
like, whatever, you know.
hmm
Yeah, just because of filmmaking, pacing, and all that shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, all right. I
But yeah,
guess
that's the Social Network.
that is
Definitely a
it.
bucket list revisit. Yeah, stay tuned for Meta and everything Zuckerberg has coming up, and also
Maybe the
stay
Cinebums
tuned.
will join the metaverse. Who knows?
Right,
We may enter the metaverse.
and also stay tuned for a special, a Thanksgiving special featuring one of the most beloved movie stars of our time, who is no stranger to being talked about on the podcast.